First, I'm joined by our political editor, Laura Tingle, to discuss that speech. We're in this unusual world, aren't we, where we've got a leader of the opposition, a Liberal leader, not offering tax cuts. There is, of course, the excise measure. Tell me about that. Why do we think he's gone for that?
Well, look, I think he's made such a virtue right through the 3 years of being a small government guy, of saying the government's, profligate in its spending, that's adding to inflationary pressures. He sort of boxed himself in a little bit. The advantage of the fuel excise measure is, of course, that, that's something that people can feel in their pockets straight away. And, of course, they're saying that they would do that straight away, whereas the government's offered this tax cut, which doesn't come in for a while. But I think the interesting thing, Sarah, is we're also going into this campaign now with starting tomorrow, with basically the campaign launches already having happened in the Parliament in this last week. And we're not going to see a lot of change in terms of spending, big spending promises from either side, because on one side, Labor's quite clearly not got a lot of extra spending that it's put aside. And on this side, he is making a bit of a virtue of, he's making a big virtue of not spending a lot of money. Now, the fuel excise measure that was announced today, which he's re-announced tonight, if you like, is interesting. It's 12-month halving of the figure. There's already a lot of contest over whether the sorts of savings that are involved are actually realistic or not, and whether they'll actually be more than the tax cut.
That's right. Now, if we're going to go to some of the other big measures in the speech that we've just seen, maybe we should go straight to the question about gas, because it's been rumoured for a while, but here we have it. Peter Dutton announcing a gas reservation policy. Now, the tricky thing about gas, as we know, is it's extremely complex. It only matters if you can nail down the detail. We have been here before with the now opposition promising a gas-led recovery that didn't lead to much of a gas-led recovery. Let's just talk first of all about why we're getting this as one of the centrepieces of his speeches.
Well, the opposition has obviously invested a lot at some point in this idea about nuclear policy, which is for a long way down the track, and it's not really taken off, shall we say.
Actually, that's an interesting question, because I wonder how exciting it is for voters to think about something that's going to change the prices of their electricity. Of course, we've got gas now, but in 10 years' time.
There's two teensy references to nuclear in this speech, Sarah. Gas is supposed to be the answer short term when you're saying terrible renewables are unreliable. Now the problem is, and the reason why we don't have an East Coast gas reservation, which basically is a thing that says, okay, gas producers, you've got to hold back some of your gas production for the domestic market, is because, and it was discussed regularly in the Howard government, is because it creates all sorts of issues for the market. We have set up a system where we export most of our gas, and there are long-term contracts there, and so there's an economic sovereignty issue. That is, what Peter Dutton has suggested tonight raises really serious economic sovereignty questions. He says that the coalition will immediately introduce a reservation. Now, you can only do that if you're going to use gas that's already in production.
I guess I'll wait until he comes up and we will ask him about that, because I think the question is open as to whether that means existing projects or future projects that they want to get up and running quickly.
There's nothing in his speech which makes it provisional.
Yes.
So there is that question. Then there is the question of him saying, well, we will generate more gas because there's all this gas to be got in the southeast corner of Australia. There's a reason why that gas hasn't been got, and that's because the states control it. There's been long-term brawls in both New South Wales and Victoria about whether you open up those gas fields, and the answer has been no for a variety of reasons under a variety of state governments of different political persuasions. So how you actually achieve that, once again, big question.
But very interesting from a political point of view, because one thing we do know, whatever the solution is, and we know the solutions are also highly complex, we do know that we have a gas crisis in Australia, that supply is running out. Correct. I know we have these forecasts that get pushed forward a little bit, another few years, but it is absolutely coming. There is a cliff coming.
That's right.
So it's a legitimate forum for the election. And how do you think the government is going to respond to something that's come up in a real form. At least it's a suggestion of an active policy that they claim will make a big difference quickly.
Well, there's certainly speculation that the government will not exactly match this, but may go into the same territory. The question is whether it is prospective or not. If it's prospective, the Commonwealth really only controls offshore gas. So that's another, thing that you've got to keep in mind, but it may well talk about this as well. And, the other option is that we actually sort of find ourselves, even more than we're doing, actually buying gas back that's been exported somewhere else.
Yes, the thing about gas that drives you crazy. Well done, WA, for getting there quicker. But just coming back to what we're looking at today, we've also got questions over migration. It's been a huge part of the debate for a long time, but there is no offering from Peter Dutton on the net migration figure. Were you expecting that today?
I wasn't sure because he's been all over the shop on this. Overall, like the rest of the speech, a lot of it is just reaffirmations of his general positions on things. What he said in the speech is that he's going to cut permanent migration by 25%, and as we've covered regularly on this program, that's a real question because there's this backlog of people who want to bring their partners into Australia. Is Peter Dutton actually going to stop them bringing their partners into Australia? That's what you've got to do. He's talked about a cap on student numbers, and that's something where the opposition actually stopped the government doing that during this term of Parliament. Now it's talking about an unspecified cap because it doesn't want to upset the regional universities. So once again, very vague, and it's not clear how that will be sufficient to do what Peter Dutton says it will do, which is to free up housing supply and reduce demand.
Obviously, that's going to be the next thing. Laura, thanks for the interim and quick response to Peter Dutton's speech.
Thanks, Sarah.
Now, the opposition leader is only a few minutes away, but first, now we're going to just take a quick look back at Budget Week here in Canberra.
Funding's there in this budget.
Cost of living relief in the budget.
This is a budget for the next 5 weeks.
Not for the next 5 years and beyond.
Albanese government's fourth federal budget, Jim Chalmers catching the country off guard with a surprise tax cut for every Australian.
These tax cuts are the biggest part of a substantial and responsible cost of living package in last night's budget. To vote against this legislation would be to stand against more cost of living relief that Australians need and deserve.
This is a budget that is clearly a pre-election budget and pretty clearly pitched at Middle Australia. We've got tax cuts but not tax reform.
This cruel hoax perpetrated on the Australian public of offering 70 cents in 15 months' time, 70 cents a day in 15 months' time. This government had an opportunity in the budget to deliver support. Indeed, they had the opportunity in the last 3 budgets to deliver support. They didn't do that.
The opposition has labelled the tax cuts an election bribe.
Now, the Coalition has promised to halve Australia's fuel excise for 1 year, shaving off 25 cents a litre at the bowser after rejecting Labor's surprise tax cuts.
It'll mean for the average family that fills up just one car once a week, a $14 saving per week. And what that will mean is real relief right away for Australians, not fake relief in 15 months' time.
This is a one-off, time-limited piece of cost of living relief within 24 hours of Peter Dutton voting against permanent tax cuts for every Australian taxpayer.
You opposed them. They are now law. They've passed Parliament yesterday. If you win the election, will you repeal those cuts, or will voters get both a tax break and cheaper fuel under you?
Well, Sarah, it's an either-or option, which can't pretend that we've got endless amounts of money.
We'll re-establish those fiscal rules that households have to abide by, that businesses have to abide by, but that government has thrown out since Labor came to power.
So 25 cents off a litre of petrol or a $5 weekly coffee. This really is a cost of living election. The question is, what do voters want more?